now take that thought, like I should enjoy playing with my kids, and going, like changing maybe the thought to, I sometimes enjoy playing with my kids and I sometimes don't, and that's okay. And that way you show up in like compassion for yourself. Like if you do enjoy it, it's fine. If you don't, you're also fine. And you find other ways to connect with your children that doesn't involve play. Now, if you're working on it and you're like, I want to get better at it, that's a totally different mindset rather than like the beating yourself up mindset. Like, I must do this. I should be doing this. I don't know why I don't do this. Hi, and welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast, episode number 84. Today on this podcast, I want to talk to you about a concept or a pattern that I noticed in myself and in my clients over time. That is how we come up with what people should or shouldn't do, or what people should be or shouldn't be. And the more exact way to describe this is that I've found is using the concept of manuals, which is relationship manuals. And Brooke Castillo basically defines it as like, of the life coach school, Brooke Castillo, that is, because maybe there's another Brooke Castillo out in the world. She defines it as like you have a book of rules and expectation of what is normal, kind, and acceptable behavior for someone else in their interactions with us. So it could be, you're shoulding or shouldn'ting people. And sometimes it comes across as very, like kind and in compassion. And what I want to offer you is to notice the areas in your life where you are showing up with these manuals. So if you think about the idea of a manual, it's like when you, for example, I think the best example is like when you buy furniture from IKEA and it has this manual and it has a million things that you do and how to put the thing together and all the screws and you can never figure it out. And it's like this A and B go together, and then if you put the frame, then C goes to D. You follow the manual, right? Or it could be like a standard operating procedures manual, which is like if you have a business or if you are like maybe talking about like your own life, how do you like operate and run through the world? Hey mama, you deserve a life free of overwhelm and burnout. Welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. I'm your host, life and mindset coach, Shiro Bergbauer. I'm also a wife, mom, and CRNA. This is the podcast for high-achieving mamas in medicine like you and I. Together, we'll learn how to navigate the ups and downs of working motherhood. If you're looking to thrive in your relationships and overcome overwhelm in your motherhood, marriage, and medicine, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. I was thinking about this, and one of the things I wanted to share is something that I have reframed in my own parenting. If you have toddlers, you know that sometimes like parenting a toddler is just like, it's draining, right? I was thinking about this from the context of how like we have these manuals that are unwritten, and it's like the idea, like for example, kids should be behaved, children should be polite, children should listen to their parents, whatever it is, right? What I notice in my own parenting is when I show up with the energy, for example, when my daughter throws a tantrum and I show up in the idea that she should be different, I start to argue with reality. And so I'm like, no, you should be different. You shouldn't be doing this. And what happens is that I get frustrated, right? Because she's not reading the script. Like, what is even going on? And then we both get frustrated and it's difficult to connect. As you know, in my work, and I've shared this even when I had the episode with Dr. Tina Payne Bryson, I wholeheartedly believe in the idea of discipline as teaching. And so it's kind of hard to teach somebody when you are in your, heavy emotions, right? What I learned from myself is when my toddler is having a toddler moment and I start to tell myself she should be doing something different, or she shouldn't do that, or she should say this, or she should do that, I get into resistance. And the more I stay in resistance, the more difficult it is for me to connect with her and troubleshoot and solve for what is going on. So I started this like little mindset tweak that has really, really changed the game for me as far as how I parent. This is for me the thought that of course she is. Like if we are in the store and she wants ice cream and I say, no, we're not buying that ice cream today. and she throws herself on the ground. She's in her moment, and I start to think like, oh my God, these people are going to think I'm a terrible mom. And like, why is she doing this? She shouldn't be doing that. And she should not be embarrassing me, quote unquote, in public or whatever. I don't pause and connect with her, right? I was thinking about that, and I was reminded of, I guess, an idea that came from The Whole Brain Child by Drs. Daniel Siegel and Dr. Tina Payne Bryson. And this is the idea of the brain integration. So if you think about integration is like taking different parts and making them work as a whole. So integration takes the distinct parts of our brain and helps them work together as a whole. So when kids aren't integrated, right, it's so easy to see because they become overwhelmed by their emotions, confused and chaotic. They can't respond calmly and capably to the situation at hand. So we see tantrums, we see meltdowns, aggression, and most of the other challenging experience of parenting and life as a result of that loss of integration. So now they're in disintegration. And what we want as parents is to help them become better integrated so they can use their whole brain in a coordinated way. So imagine that I have this like mind manual that my toddler shouldn't be throwing a tantrum, or she shouldn't be, getting upset, or she shouldn't be dragging her feet about going to school this morning. And I get into resistance. It's very difficult for me to assist her in going back to like calm and integrate. So one of the things when I started telling myself, yeah, of course she is, it doesn't mean that I'm permitting like negative behavior in that moment. It just puts me in curiosity, like, how can I connect with her in this moment so that she can regulate? Sometimes I think we just get so caught up in like, oh my God, she's never going to like listen to me. We forget like we are dealing with a brain at a certain age. The other thing that I was thinking about is like when you're little, and you have like fights with your siblings, right? And your parents are like, you shouldn't be fighting. And, and I think about that now, like that was so age appropriate. Like, should we have been like, obviously like duking it out and like hurting each other? No, but it was so age appropriate. Because guess what? Like at 39, 33, and 30, my siblings and I don't have those kinds of fights, right? So now it's like, if we were doing that now, it would be like, oh, why are you doing that? But like as younger kids, when we were doing that and we were always told we shouldn't be doing that, we should be different, we weren't really like being permitted to be ourselves in that present moment. And so the resistance would come up with our parents, like trying to change the thing so we could be different. So I want you to notice with yourself, like when, for example, you have little kids and you have expectations as far as like when they do certain things, and then you get frustrated that they're not following the script, so to speak. Just notice for yourself, like, is it age appropriate that they are having that resistance, right? Not because we're permitting them to just like run the show, because we are showing up in curiosity and compassion. Okay, if it is age appropriate for them to have this response, how can I guide them as the parent to get them to a response that is going to yield a positive result? So when we show up without that manual that the child should be doing this and shouldn't do this, we are more open and flexible to the way they show up. I want to give you some other examples of manuals that we have to ourselves. It could look like I should be a better steward of my time, or I should be more caring, or I should, make sure I get all the things done. And sometimes we say it like almost to discipline ourselves. And I was thinking about that as I was reading the work of Richard Schwartz, who wrote No Bad Parts. And he basically introduces the concept of the internal family systems. The idea is like we have different parts to ourselves. So like if you think about like a family, like you have the mom and the dad and the kids and all these like existing in ourselves, there are parts of us that are like very drill sergeant, right? It's like, you better do the thing. And then there's a part of us that's like gentle, like aunt that's like, oh, you're doing a good job, like take care of yourself. And I was thinking about that in the context of like manuals that we have for ourselves. Like when we tell ourselves we should be certain things, it's almost like we give that drill sergeant version of ourselves the task of like managing our brain, when we know very well that yes, it would be great if we did those things, but shoulding or shouldn'ting ourselves like doesn't serve us, right? When you show up from the energy, for example, that you should be doing certain things, you should be managing your time better, and it only causes more shame or like disappointment, the actions that you take with that model of you should be doing X, Y, and Z, they're not going to be sustainable in the long run because they're not coming from a place of compassion. It's like you're forcing yourself to be better at managing your time. Versus when you say, I have this amount of time and I will be kind to myself in how I manage my time. So you show up in curiosity and you troubleshoot and you figure out like, how can I do the things I want to do from a place of kindness? Like, recently I was on a coaching call with Coach Brig Johnson, and it was a group coaching call. And she said, like, you don't have to like attend every fight your brain invites you to, right? Like if your brain invites you to a fight that's telling you you're not good enough and you're not good at time management, you can just be like, I'm not joining that fight. Have a nice day, brain. Sometimes we go through life like just like our brains tell us things and we start to report it like it's the news. Like, oh, I'm very bad with money and I should be better with money. Or I'm not good with time management. I should be better with my time management. And we just should ourselves like through life. I just want you to notice the areas in your life where you're shooting or shouldn'ting yourself and decide ahead of time to show up in like compassionate, kind energy instead of that like drill sergeant energy, and begin to like release that like manual for yourself. Like, oh, I should be doing this. The other one that I see is like when we have these set points like, oh, I should have accomplished this at 30 or I should have accomplished this at 40. And it's like you like almost say it at the news, like at 40, you should have blah, 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 blah. And you realize that it's a manual that you have set up for your life. Like it's not a rule. It's not a law, right? Like we know like there's like laws and rules, like you shouldn't steal, right? And it's a law, right? Versus like you should have accomplished these things at 30 and now you haven't. So like you're like on the wrong. Before I shift to manuals about other people, I also think like sometimes when we have these manuals as far as like self-will or willpower or discipline ourselves, and we see it in other people and how they accomplish things, we may sometimes use that against ourselves. Like, oh, other people do it, therefore I should do it. Therefore I should have this manual for myself. Or as like, oh, this is one of my favorite ones. Like when a mom says like, I should like playing with my kids. And I'm like, where did you learn that? Like that you should always enjoy playing with your kids? Because it's not for everybody. Are there people who enjoy playing with their kids? Absolutely. Is it for everybody? Absolutely not. So when you create that manual for yourself, like, oh, I should enjoy playing with my kids. So like, let me just use that as a model. And the circumstance is just playing with your kids. Like that's a neutral thing. And you have this thought that I should enjoy playing with my kids. So then the kids are playing and you're just like, oh my gosh, when is this game going to end? Like, then you start like shaming yourself and you're disappointed. Well, what you start to do are actions that don't actually move you forward towards like connecting with your children. So the result line is you don't enjoy playing with your kids and you also don't enjoy being with yourself. Versus if you just decide for yourself, like drop that manual, like who said that every mom has to enjoy every waking minute of being with your child and playing with your child? Like, who made that rule? Can we give ourselves permission to not always enjoy all the moments of parenting and deciding like, I get to set the rules in my life and I don't have to live by these like strict, like archaic, like patriarchal, like rules like, oh yeah, moms should enjoy playing with their kids. Therefore, if I'm not enjoying them, I am really flawed and I should like, not be a mom. Now take that thought, like I should enjoy playing with my kids and going, like changing maybe the thought to, I sometimes enjoy playing with my kids and I sometimes don't, and that's okay. And that way you show up in like compassion for yourself. Like if you do enjoy it, it's fine. If you don't, you're also fine. And you find other ways to connect with your children that doesn't involve play. Now, if you're working on it and you're like, I want to get better at it, that's a totally different mindset rather than like the beating yourself up mindset. Like, I must do this. I should be doing this. I don't know why I don't do this. Right? So the other one that I was thinking about is like when maybe you are like having a frustrated moment and you're like, I should be more grateful, or I should like, I should, notice what's happening in the moment. Like that almost dismisses the part of you that is not enjoying that particular moment, right? Like, again, going back to like the internal family systems, like we have parts of us, right? So there's the part that's enjoying it and there's part that's not. So you saying I should be grateful and #blessed in the moment is not like tuning into the part of you that doesn't enjoy it. Can you have both without setting that manual for ourselves? Now, I'm going to move to the next manual, which is relationships manual. So shooting and shouldn'ting other people. And I'm going to first start with like spouses. So it could be like my spouse should know my love language, or husbands should be romantic, or husbands should do these things, or my husband should know what I need. And you go out in the world and you have this manual. Husbands should know what wives need. And so you have a need and your husband doesn't know it. And it's like the end of the world. He doesn't know what I need. I'm frustrated. And like it gets you out of like being responsible for how you show up in the relationship and like delegating the responsibility to your partner to figure it out versus just going like, my husband is who he is. Like maybe he doesn't always know what I need. And of course he is the way he is. Like accepting the person for who they are. Again, I want to reiterate, acceptance doesn't mean like giving them a pass to just be, unkind or like not tune in. Acceptance just means like I meet you where you are and then we work together to build a relationship that we want. So another one that I had a client share one time to me is she told me that she believes that like when you go somewhere with your spouse, like you're a unit and you should always be on the same page. And I was like, where did you learn that? And she was like, well, I mean, I feel like if I go somewhere with my husband, like we should be like jiving and we should like understand each other. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So if your husband like has a different opinion in that moment, like something's terribly gone wrong. And she was like, yeah, of course. Because like people are going to like, if something happens, like people are going to think that I endorse what he's saying. And I was like, but you're two individuals with agency each. Like, isn't that like invalidating the fact that you both have agency? And then we coached through that to help her see why like that was a thought error that was based on a manual that she had about relationships. Like maybe you think that's what the person needs, but maybe that's not how the relationship is supposed to be showing up. Like if you don't drop that manual, you will just end up disappointed. Like you will have these manuals towards your spouse that your spouse hasn't read the manual. So it's like you have these written expectations like, oh, like my spouse should buy me a gift on my birthday. They don't know, by the way. And you're just walking around the world and your birthday comes and they don't buy the gift. And you're like, yep, see, they don't care about me. And you like sulk all day and you're upset. And then he's like, what's going on? And you're like, nothing. And then you like start crying and he's like, what's going on? And you're like, you don't care about me. You don't remember my birthday. By the way, this is a totally personal experience of mine that I had this like meltdown moment before I was like learning how to manage my mind, and I accused my husband of not caring about my birthday. And do you not understand how much my birthday means to me? And you don't care. And he was just like, oh, like I honestly like didn't mean to like do that. Like it was just like I forgot to buy the thing. And so when we decide to drop our manuals, I think it gives people in our lives permission to show up as who they truly are without these like expectations that don't make any sense. The other example that I wanted to share with you is like, let's say you have a manual about like how other people should behave. And a classic example of this is people should be kind. And it's a very good thought, like people should be kind. So then someone isn't kind to you or somebody isn't kind to another person and you just get all wound up because they're not being kind because they should be kind. And instead, you step out of like self-compassion and compassion towards that person and you get into judgment. And now you're like, they're not being kind. Therefore, like I should treat them a certain way or something's going on, like I need to fix it. And you step out of your own like highest self in order to try to like fix and correct another person's like quote unquote lack of the thing that you would like them to have. What I want you to just be aware of is when you do that, you are not tuning into their agency and instead you're holding them to your own personal moral or, whatever compass you're holding them to. Another example is like somebody shared with me recently, she got a job promotion and she was like, I don't understand why these people aren't happy for me. Like when my colleague got a job promotion, I was happy for her. And in my mind, of course, this was not in a coaching context, but in my mind, I was like, this is why you're actually upset. You're upset because you have this manual that people should be happy for others when they get a job promotion. And now that you're seeing evidence of the contrary in the world, you're like, something's terribly wrong. and it needs to be fixed. And so you get into like protest, which is something that again we see in like children, like when children are left in a crib by themselves and they're crying, like they protest. So we get into that protest of, no, things are not the way I want them to be, so this is something terribly wrong. And sometimes we get into that like, savior mentality where it's like, I need to fix it, I need to teach people how to be kind. Another example is when somebody has hurt us or hurt other people, and we have the idea that people should be held accountable for their wrongdoing. And so people should be quote unquote punished. And so it comes from a very like clean place sometimes where you're like, well, they should pay for what they did. But instead, what happens is when you go out in the world and you see evidence of people who are quote unquote getting away with doing the things that you think they should be punished for, you just get into more protests. So you like then are like arguing with reality, like this shouldn't be this way, like it should be different. And the reason it's not different is because people should be, people should be doing this and they're not doing it and they need to fix it. Versus like, yeah, I just have this thought about how people should like move around the world. And some people just won't do it. And it's okay because I'm not going to shouldn't other people because I can't control them. And I think the idea of manuals is actually from a very compassionate place. I think its origin, but what it creates is this like very controlling mindset that somehow we are the higher authority and we decide like what the world should look like. So what should a husband do or shouldn't do, or what should a friend do? I actually had this scenario. It was in one of the groups that I'm in, and there was a conversation about a friendship kind of unraveling. And one of the things that was suggested to the person who had posted was, well, those are not your true friends, because if she was a true friend, she would have messaged you. And I was like, that is such a manual, like a manual that says like a true friend should reach out when there is like sort of rupture in the relationship. It doesn't make it true that because the person didn't reach out, that they're a bad person. They could have been going through something. They could have, whatever it is, like there's not a set definition. And so I think what we need to notice is like when we show up in life, in relationships with these expectations of other people that are not making sense. Like, my husband should do this, or my friends should show up for me in this certain way. And if they don't, like something's really, really wrong. And I think sometimes what we notice is like the fact that we have these manuals also kind of blurs boundaries, because it's like we want people to do what we want them to do, or we want them to act the way we should want them to act, or how we would act in that situation, which then blurs a boundary, because like when does it then become them and when is it me? Like if I'm over here like thinking like it's almost like a marionette. Like when you have manuals, it's like literally you're like a puppet person and you're like just moving the marionette and like, oh yeah, you should turn right and you should turn left. Like another example like sometimes I have is like people should be like drivers should be considered of other drivers on the road. And when I went to my driving classes, I learned how to be a defensive driver. So I just go out in the world assuming that I am the only person who is paying attention to my vehicle when I'm driving to the place. So I am not abdicating responsibility to other people on the road to take care of me. And dropping that manual for some people might be difficult because like people should not honk or people shouldn't do this. And I'm like, people do what they want because they have agency. We can't control for that. So I want you to notice areas in your life where you have manuals. Could it be your children, your relationship with your friends, your relationship with your partner, your kids? Could it be your job? Like where are you having these like should or shouldn't be manuals that are not serving you? And then I want you to just like decide ahead of time that the only person you can control for how they show up is you. And I want to offer you something too. Like, have you ever made a plan to do something and absolutely woken up the morning that you were supposed to do the thing and you didn't do it? So if we as ourselves, with the rules and like plans we set for ourselves, if we veer off course, how can we expect people to like go according to our manuals? Like we don't even stick to our own manuals sometimes. So I just want you to like pay attention to where you are having these manuals in your life and decide like maybe this is where it ends. Like this is where I just let every human in my life, even the world, just like let it be the way it's supposed to be. Because when, again, we start like creating those manuals, it goes back to one of the things that Byron Katie talks about, which is, there's 3 types of work: your work, my work, and God's work. and business, and it could be business or work. But it's like when I step out of my business, what I could be doing in my own life, into other people's business about what they should be doing, or like life shouldn't be this way, life should be fair, or life da da da. Then I'm in God's business, and I can't take care of God's business or other people's business. I can only take care of my business. So even when it seems altruistic, like, oh, this person, hurt this person and they should be paying for it, it's like, I understand that's a thought, but like, it's not your business. In all honesty, it's God's business and other people's business. And that can be a tough pill to swallow. Like, oh, I guess I was getting into other people's business, right? And it's not in like a way to admonish yourself. It's just a way to like notice, pay attention. Like, how am I showing up without reflection or without awareness? And how am I then creating this like situation where I'm setting up like what I expect other people to do when I'm like, I should be in my own business, when I should be taking care of my own plans and goals and all the things. So just to wrap up, just notice in yourself when you're, creating these expectations of yourself and you're holding yourself to these rules, or you're holding other people to those rules. Just notice them, start practicing awareness in your day-to-day life. Like, should or shouldn't other people is not serving you, and instead choose to show up in awareness and curiosity and compassion. And I will tell you that doing that work will get you so much more in your own business, building the life that you want, and the things start to fall in place. Because when you are in your business, building your life, creating awareness, and celebrating yourself and evaluating and really holding belief for yourself, you don't actually have the time or the capacity to be fine-tuning what other people should be doing in their lives, because that's their life. So stay over here in the you business, take care of that, manage your mind, pay attention to the thoughts that you're having, pay attention to the predominant thoughts, the predominant emotions of your life, and then choose to change the result line of your own life. Because when we have these manuals, what we're trying to do is going into somebody else's thought model and trying to like manipulate their thought line or manipulate their action line. And it is impossible to make somebody do or be something, because for them to do something or be something or create something, they have to have a thought that creates a feeling for them to show up in that capacity. So instead, it's like a whole lot of waste and energy on both angles. Stay over here in your business, take care of your business, stop shooting yourself, stop shooting yourself, and instead choose curiosity and compassion. All right. That's all I have for you today. I will see you next week. Have a great day. Bye now. I'm Shira Bergbauer, and you've been listening to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. New episodes are out every Monday. These episodes are created by me, Shira Bergbauer, and produced by Cassidy Mitchell. If you enjoyed this show or found it helpful, please rate it and review us on Apple Podcasts. If the concepts I share on this podcast resonate with you, or you're ready to change your relationships and mindset, I can help you. If you'd like in-depth, personalized support, I'd love to invite you to apply for my Life and Mindset coaching program. Just imagine you and I every week working together as I teach you the tools to up-level your life. To book your free 1-hour consultation call, go to www.stethoscopestoswaddles.com/consultation. You're doing a great job, Mama. Have a great week. Bye now.